Hi, everyone, and I would like to welcome you to uh, our episode today on Pathways. And today I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Bob Beare. And Dr. Bob Beare is actually first connected with him on X a while ago. His content showed up in my feed, in my feed on Twitter on X, and I deeply resonated with what you had to say there. And you have been a psychotherapist for over 25 years. And when I read on your website, when you describe yourself, you say, "I've been a psychotherapist for over 25 years, but I don't hold that against me. I led a wild and superficial life until I hit some painful walls that woke me up. I'm a dad, a psychologist, and a best-selling author and artist. And I'm personally in long-term recovery and have over 40,000 hours of helping people transform their world, and many have improved relationships, let go of shitty jobs, and started living authentically." So that's why I have here today, and I'm so excited to welcome you and to have this conversation with you.
Likewise, Gabriel, thanks for that intro. And yeah, let's have some fun together today talking about issues that people don't usually have fun with, right? Usually it's
Right.
very serious and we've got to get tight and talk about it. And well, I don't know. For me, I've been doing it so long, I said, what was that thing I wrote in there is 40,000 hours. Add that up. All that really does is say I'm old.
Yeah. And
I'm old.
experienced, not
I've
old,
been
maybe
doing it for a
experienced.
while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So I'm curious, Dr. Bob, what's your life's mission? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Well, I've developed a personal mission many times in many different workshops. My workshop that I lead these days is called the Deep Waters Experience, and we have a section there where we develop a mission. For the most part, it's stayed the same over the past 30 years. I think my early mission in my life was to avoid everything. That was my mission. How can I avoid anything that's related to feeling? That was my life's mission, and I was great at it. Man, I used everything I could get my hands on. Fortunately, some of the drugs that are killing people these days were not in my world, or I probably wouldn't be here. Uh, but eventually, there was a crash and burn enough where and I can talk about that if you want, but it
Yeah,
woke me
absolutely.
up to do this work. And I've been doing it for a long time. Usually when I try to articulate my life's mission, it has to do with creating, like being authentic, uh, accessing my own creative juice and helping the world heal and find their own creative juice. That's the way I'd frame it today.
Yeah. So tell me about your journey. You said you were avoiding your own emotions for at least for a long time in your life. That was your part one mission, right? And then finally you hit a wall. What kind of a wall did you hit?
Well, it was many cornered, many bricks in the wall. Not to make a rock and roll reference there, but well, uh, the main one that I hit, the first one I hit was a daughter. My daughter died. And it wasn't
Hmm.
there was little pieces of it that I could have done something different and maybe made it go differently. But for the most part, and believe me, I've scrutinized it for many years. It's not on me as a piece of guilt, but it was a wake up call because I hadn't cried since I was a little kid. I'm from a long line of tough guys. Gabriel, I don't know if you know anything about that, but you Swedes are
Yeah.
pretty tough bunch. In fact, I've got a big tough Swede in me. um,
Yes.
uh,
Emotion on the inside.
yeah, and I got that handed to me strong when I was about 5 years old. All right, time to shut that down, grow up, toughen up. Uh, but when my daughter died, and in fact, I'm feeling it right now, and I've learned to let myself feel it rather than try
Hmm.
to dance around it. Her name was Catherine Grace, and I held her in my arms as
Hmm.
she passed. And she cracked me open. And as a therapist in the first few years of my career, she was always like right with me when I didn't know what to do with a client or something. She'd say something like, "It's okay. Let's just be here." I used to like have dialogues with this
Mm.
infant wisdom energy. Sounds a little weird to talk about, but anyway, that cracked me wide open. But then I shut down again, and then my wife left. She'd had enough of me. And eventually, because I pushed her away about 10 times, by the way, which is a little bit of a doorway to the conversation around love addiction, right? The push me,
Yeah.
pull you of relationships. But finally, she went away. The joke that I tell is when they're married to someone else, you know, it's probably over. So, you know, that one took me down. And I, I was mildly suicidal, reached out and got help in 12-step recovery. At that time, I had some religion going, so the Episcopal Church was useful for a moment until they told me, you know, Bob, you can't pray this shit away. And that's what I was hoping. But then, you know, I ran into a good priest who was in recovery and was also a therapist. And he said, "No, here's a card for a therapist, and here's the 12-step group you need. Get out of here."
Yeah.
Not a lot of religious folks, and you know about that world more than I
Oh,
do.
for
Not a
sure.
lot of religious folks will treat it that way. So I was lucky, and so anyway, that's the big wall that I hit. I had been using and trying to medicate in every way that I could until it didn't work anymore.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, I'm truly sorry for your daughter's loss as well, for her
Yeah,
death. Uh, and what you just revealed here to me when I listen to you, it's the important work that you have to do with yourself in order to be able to engage in life in an authentic way, right? We all have our baggages. In fact, I was reading one of your newsletters issues. I think one of, not the most recent one, but like the, yeah, I think it might have been the most recent one on shame
yeah,
and transgenerational trauma
yeah,
and complex trauma and how shame gets stuck in our bodies and how it's not only an emotion but it's more than that, and how the way actually out of your emotions is to allowing yourself or letting you learning to feel your emotions, right?
yeah. All right,
So
you're gonna open that can. You're gonna open that can, huh,
yeah, for
Gabriel?
sure.
Did you want to say
It's
something
open.
else? Yeah.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. Uh, well, yeah. It's it's a misunderstood dynamic in our culture, in the world. It's running everything. Let me just let that sit for a minute. The problems in the this is pretty maybe arrogant or grandiose of me to say that I have the answer to all the world's problems, right? But I think I do. It's unresolved trauma. It's conditioning. It's the Ruizes in the Four Agreements. So have you stumbled into that one yet? The book, The Four
i've
Agreements.
I have
Uh,
seen it. I've seen it, but I've never actually read
yeah,
it.
they don't call it trauma. They call it domestication. The ways that we've been domesticated. I like that. Or indoctrinated, or whatever word you want to use to describe it. The first few years of our life, we were like a sponge. And we were, even from those of us that are from the best of families, good families. I'm from a good family. A lot of people come into my office with a shit show life, right? And and I say, you know, it could have something to do with some of that stuff that happened when you were little. And the first thing they often say to me is, "Oh, no, I'm from a good family." What? It has nothing to do with it. It's like sometimes these people with white picket fence, perfect facade families are the biggest,
Hmm.
are carrying the most enmeshment kind of trauma. But whatever happens in our childhood, there's no sense in blaming them anyway. That is a waste of energy. We're not blaming people anymore, but we have to look at what happened. And here's why. When we get thwarted or rerouted or encouraged to be other than what we are naturally, right? We have to pack away a part of ourselves, right? And it's we should be angry about it, about having to do that. But maybe we're in a situation where we can't be angry, so we stuff that anger and we just do what the giants, also known as caregivers or parents, tell us to do, right? So we pack away that anger, or maybe it made us sad, and maybe we were told not to be, you know, I'll give you something to cry about. So we pack that away, right? And then maybe we're scared, and maybe guys like you and I from Swedes are told, "Don't, I ain't scared of nothing." Well, that's what we say over here. I don't know. How do you say I'm not scared of anything in Swedish?
Jag fruktar inget.
Yeah.
I fear nothing. Jag fruktar inget. Yeah.
Yeah. So we all of this stuff. What do you think? It doesn't go away. It's still in the body. And little kids don't say dad needs a therapist, mom needs to get to meetings. No, they blame it on themselves. The problems here are because there's something wrong with me. So
Yeah.
we start, especially around 6 or 7, we start figuring out, this is because of me. I need to change me. That's why this is a shit show out here, right? And it's being driven by a feeling that we call shame. We reinforce it with these messages in our head that say we're not enough, we're not doing it right, we're not productive enough, we're not strong enough, we're not. A lot of women get we're not pretty enough, we're not nice enough, whatever the hell it is. It just stacks up in our body, and then we create our life's mission to bring the mission idea up based on those messages. And we wonder why we hit a wall in our mid-30s, many of us, or 40s, whatever it is, because we've been running on a script that is a set of messages that aren't ours, a feeling in our body, which is shame, that's not ours. At my workshops, we do a process called "It's Not My Shame," which is a very powerful phrase to say out loud. It's not my shame. Your listeners might, if they're in the car, look around, make sure nobody's listening so that so they don't think you're an idiot or whatever. And who gives a shit, by the way, anyway.
Exactly.
It's not my shame is very powerful, because that's what happened. Our caregivers had their own bucket of shame. They put it on us, and we're carrying it like a football. So that's a little bit of an intro to maybe more than you asked for on
No,
the
that's good.
topic of
That's
shame.
wonderful. No, that's wonderful. I mean, my experience when I grew up, I probably was I'm a highly sensitive person, and I
Yeah,
was a highly sensitive child. And I remember clearly, I remember as a child, I cried easily. Like crying came easy to me, at least easy with quotation mark. That's how it was viewed by my environment. That I was sensitive, and most of the time my cries were met with, "Okay, you have to toughen up, right?
yeah,
Put those feelings away." And as an adult, something that I've noticed, because I've done a lot of also personal work, somatic work, mindfulness work, meditation, I noticed that like when something happens today that should not should, but something that's sad and or something that normally might have brought tears from my eyes, right? Have moved me. I noticed that there is a sensation, there's a tingling in my body, but it's as if my mind shuts it down almost immediately. So
yeah,
it does not even reach my conscious mind, and I'm aware of this. It's
yeah,
not that I don't have a language for my emotions to describe what I'm feeling, but it's just there's almost like there's a stop here, right, around my neck, and then it doesn't go up.
yeah,
It's almost like it shuts down. Is this
yeah,
something that you would say is like a I mean, obviously, this is a script. That's how I would view a script, right? So, for a
yeah.
person who has been formed in an environment such as the one I'm describing, could be other things as well, right? It could be other things as well. How do you work with a person? Like, how do you actually access those emotions? How do you make the connection between head and the rest of your experience, your body?
It's a great, it's a question, but it's a great example that you gave, because I have the same thing. It's and the more, so one answer to the question is support. Like me hanging out with you is good for me. What you just shared with me, I went, oh yeah, me too, and that gives me permission. Because I don't even know what's going on inside of me most of the time unless I can hear it from someone else. And then I say,
Mm.
oh yeah, that's the reason for support, because we're in ourselves. We don't, we're like a fish in a glass bowl but we don't even know we don't know we're a fish. We don't know we're in water. We don't know we're in a bowl unless we see another fish over there in a bowl. Holy shit, I'm in a bowl, right? So the first thing I would say is we have to get out of ourselves and be vulnerable and be with other people who are doing this work. But the two most powerful processes, and you've been exposed to if you've done somatic experiencing therapy, you've been exposed to a little bit of this, but my world is a little bit more in the of course I'm a theater guy, so I of course was attracted to psychodrama, which is not as popular as it was maybe a decade or two ago, but to me it's the most powerful trauma intervention there is, because we actually get out of ourselves and put roles on the carpet, and that's the centerpiece work that we do at the Deep Waters Experience, which is a workshop that I lead. And we have to get out of ourselves some way or another, Gabriel, to be able to see ourselves and to be able to have the feelings come up. Because that little tingling that you're talking about, if we could say yes. Now, what is that? Oh, well, it's right here in my body. And say more about that. When did you first feel that tingle? Well, I think I was about 6. And I had to learn how to not say. I remember my dad said that, okay, pick someone to play your dad. And immediately it rattles loose those lodged pain in our body. The tears come. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear this part, what I'm about to say. The good news is there's a way out of being stuck in our lives. The bad news is it requires grief work. It's going to come through. The healing is through tears for the most part. Grief is the cleansing mechanism in our system. We were told, and many of us, that is the one thing we were told never to do. Right? It's too vulnerable. It's not, especially men. I don't know. Women get it too. Women have to, maybe women have a little bit more permission to access the tears, but they're going to wipe it away quick because it's going to run the mascara or some shit.
Yeah.
We've all got this. Women get the be nice, men get the be tough, and we both get a little of each. But in both cases, it's lodged in our body, and we have to get out. The other method that is even more accessible is inner child work, which we could talk a little bit more about if you want to. But
Yeah,
that's
say more about that.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not sick of hearing me talk yet?
No,
I'm getting a little
please.
sick of hearing me talk.
No. Continue. I like listening here. Yeah.
So back in the 90s, I guess, John Bradshaw, I don't know if you've stumbled into him. Probably so, because you have some religious studies background, I think, and he was heavy into that, and then he got heavy into the healing trauma thing and grabbed a hold of this inner child healing idea. And now it's kind of everywhere. You've heard inner child work, and it's a little cringy. Maybe it brings up some shame for people. My inner child. I mean, they probably had Saturday Night Live script making fun of it, I would imagine. Because it brings up the shame for people, right? I'm going to talk to my little child within me. Well, it's extremely powerful transformational work. Anything that brings up shame for people, there's probably something really juicy in there that we're avoiding. To talk to my inner child, when that tingling that you talked about, I can feel it. All right, if I can get a pattern, a rhythm, a habit of saying, "Hey, buddy," I mean, I know it's a little weird. Hey, buddy, what's going on? Are you having some fear? In other words, reparenting ourselves. Because another way to talk about this shame and pain that's in our body and lodged is to talk about a little, for you and me, it's a little boy inside of us. There's a little child inside of us holding this stuff and waiting for us to be the healthy parent. And when we do, it's like an inner psychodrama when we do this inner child work. Oh, so that's the intro to inner child.
It sounds quite similar to internal
Yes.
internal family system, right?
Yep.
where you talk to your parts and you ask them questions about what's going on there, what's the message you're trying to send me. It's okay. It's okay. You can feel what you're feeling. Are you willing to work with me, and so on, right? So
Yes.
you're parenting yourself, reparenting yourself.
Yeah.
And for
All of
me,
these all of
yeah,
these methods, Gabriel, started with a guy named J.L. Moreno back in the early part of the 20th century. He's the
hmm
founder of psychodrama. Empty chair work, Fritz Perls Gestalt. He stole it.
yeah,
And then all of these other any process that gets us out of ourselves, to do a little role play of any kind, is
yeah,
a trick to take to be able to get ourselves outside of ourselves far enough. And that's one of the that's for another discussion. But the distance is a master psychodrama facilitator, or or any of these processes that can help a person get exactly the right distance from themselves to feel the feelings,
yeah,
right? To take that tingle and turn it into grief.
yeah,
It's not always grief. Sometimes it comes with some anger first, but then there's a layer of grief below it, right? Or to feel the fear in in its in in its true form that we've had stuffed, right? A master facilitator can get just the right amount of distance from ourselves, from our being, from that other fish bowl,
yeah,
to be able to feel. And that feelings, for you and I being Celtic, Northern European guys, were told that's the worst thing. Well, sorry, fellas, it's
yeah.
the
That's a
doorway to
superpower.
it's the doorway to freedom.
It's the door to freedom. It's the door to superpower, to connecting with other human beings, right, on an
Yes.
authentic level as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, what you're saying, creating this distance, is also in other modalities as well, like in ACT theory, acceptance and commitment therapy. The same thing. The body is the context, and the entire idea about diffusion, namely that you have thoughts, you have emotions, and so on. That's also a way of creating a distance between you, I guess, right, and whatever you're experiencing at the moment. Yeah,
Yeah. It's an ancient idea. J.L.
for sure.
Moreno didn't come up with it. The Greeks figured it out. So the Dionysian rituals that were up in the hills, right? Enacting the mythologies of that culture. Some bright person, Sophocles, I'm not sure which one of those guys, brought it down to the people, right? They're going to
Yeah,
put theater on. I'm going to say something else in a minute, but put theater on the stage, enacting the mythologies so that they could initiate catharsis, the expression of emotion in the audience. I saw Wicked last night. Are you familiar with it? You familiar with the book that was written as a response to The Wizard of Oz? It's called Wicked.
probably it's there's a bell that rings, but I'm not sure that I've actually seen it, to be honest with
Well,
you.
when you post this podcast, hashtag Wicked, because it's
Okay.
very popular. Popular, that's one of the songs. But it's popular because it's kind of funny and attractive, and even you know it's a little poppy. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
It could be seen, but it is has an extreme depth of understanding of how shadow works, and
hmm
it's like taking the Wizard of Oz and flipping it. It's that the best person in the show is the Wicked Witch of the West, the one that in that the masses think are the worst. Right? There's
Yeah.
always a flip side to it. But I saw that last night, was moved to tears several times because of the beauty of seeing beyond the surface of what we're handed by our culture, which is a bunch of superficial crap mostly.
Yeah.
And that's I'm kind of going back to the yeah, and it brought catharsis to me. I had enough distance from me and my life uh, in a in a in a piece of theater that was created from a place of depth that moved me deeply. And uh, that's what psychodrama does. That's what internal family systems does. That's what Gestalt work, somatic experiencing, all of which are getting us just enough distance from ourselves to let those feelings come up, which is the medicine.
Yeah. This is very interesting. I'm gonna say something, then I'm gonna ask you a question. Like I wrote my dissertation, so I'm actually an expert on rituals,
Mm-hmm.
ancient rituals, medieval rituals, and what I noticed, these rituals are completely embodied. So meaning that it's not simply a text that you recite, right? There is a space. It's very similar to like how you do theater, but maybe the difference is that everybody's participating in one
Yep.
way or another. There are
Yep.
performers, obviously. There are different roles, and everybody has their own role, and they're playing their role. There is a script, but those scripts are thought through, so they actually take on meaning, or they have a language that creates and describes realities that are probably also, now that I'm thinking about it, are expressing what you have on the inside, kind of thing, where the moods, like the tone, because the rituals were sung. It wasn't. They were not simply said. Right. It's not something just you reread or you act out. It's you. There is song involved and different tonalities and how they affect the body. And there's movement in the body that's done by the different people, the different actors. For example, when I looked at these rituals and the text content of the rituals, what I found was that they expressed human conditions such as accepting the fact that I'm wounded, stating the fact that there's freedom out of this. Obviously, religious ritual. So the freedom would be to be out of, like, you would have to use the traditional theological terms such as sin or brokenness, or would also be like talking about creating a distance or a discrepancy between divinity in one sense and me as a human being who is not distant from divinity, but rather filled with divinity in one sense. At the same time, not rejecting my own shadow, not my own brokenness, because at the same as I am approaching the sacred room, which is the ritual, like one of the things that I looked at, as I'm approaching divinity, as I'm approaching sacredness of life or sacredness of God, I am also seeing that I have this shadow. I have parts of myself that I'm not so proud of, parts of myself that I'm not so happy about. And that's okay, because God becomes then the merciful God in this sense, in this kind of situation, the merciful God who invites me into his presence, not because, he wants perfection, because he wants me, fully me, right? So that's just a comment
Yeah.
what I was thinking about when you asked the
Beautiful.
question. So yeah,
Beautiful.
my question then is, what are parents supposed to do? Like when you talk about the children and that they're molded so early on, and they're left with their own thoughts and emotions, and nobody's there to talk to them and tell them, you know what, Gabe, my mom and I, we had an argument, but it's not because of you. It's not your fault. I can see that it's like validating my
Mm,
experience, right? And helping that person or the child to orient themselves. But a parent who hasn't done the work, like, what are they supposed to do? Is it,
yeah.
are you screwed? Or is it, or if you're past 8 or past 9 or 10, whatever, and you have had this experience, is it, what are you supposed to do?
Man, this is rich. This is good. Are we doing a podcast or are we just having an incredibly rich exchange here, man? You are an expert on ritual. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to comment on that first, and then if my
Yeah,
old
for
brain
sure.
remembers what the actual question was, I'll respond to that. But the healing work that you and I are referring to is ritual theater.
Hmm.
It's ritualized. I had a theater company for 10 years called Houston Playback Theater. Playback theater is a derivative of psychodrama. It's actually taking the stories of the people that are in the audience and bringing it to the stage, and the actors enact it on the spot. It's very powerful, or it can be very bad theater as well, depending depending on many factors. But bringing our our reality out of ourselves and putting it on the stage in a ritual way is ancient, right? It's 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 the same topic. We have to, and you can call it God or spiritual
Sure.
practice or getting closer to the source or whatever language you want to use. Everything that's locked down in our system is blocking us from that, right? And every time we dislodge these places in our body that are keeping us from being in the flow of this thing called, I don't care what you call it. There's a, you want to define God and love and all that. Should we do that? Should we define these undefinable ideas? No, but I'll tell you one thing: these blocked places of trauma and conditioning in me are keeping me from that beautiful magic. These rituals that are not part, especially in the States. I don't know about Sweden, but in the States, there's a couple of them. Get a driver's license, and if you're Jewish, you can do the bat mitzvah. There's no
Yeah.
other rituals. However, we will always find a ritual because we are ritual beings. We are built for it. So I found many of them. And if you're not offered a ritual that has depth and authenticity, we will, especially my personality type, will find rituals. I had many rituals. I was in the addiction world for many years, addiction treatment world after I got sober. Unbelievable amount of it. Sometimes these young guys that would come into treatment, I would go to them to ask them about how a particular drug affects them and what dosage, what's the best thing to do to help a guy detox, because they were so deeply embedded in that ritual of using methamphetamines or that ritual of using, and my rituals around cocaine and alcohol were very ritualized, right? It's we will find a ritual, a shadow ritual, if we're not given an initiatory opportunity. And that's why I do these weekends. I've been doing them for 30 years, helping people into a healthy ritual of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey model of which I know you know well. The short version is we need to be pulled away from this thing, whatever it is, that's yanked out of it, right? And given and launched into the descent, right? And then we need to be given an ordeal of some kind that feels like we're almost going to die. And we make it, and then we come back and we return to the community initiated. There's nothing in our culture that gives us that in a formalized way. Oh, well, there's a few, and I'm involved in it. I think it's extremely important, but it's not in our culture. And that's, again, we will find a ritual initiation. That's why gangs are so popular. That's why the world is at war. That's why I say this unresolved trauma is the biggest problem in our world, and it needs to be addressed. And you and I are doing it, at least putting a few drops of doing our own work in the bucket, right? Plus inviting anybody that's ready to do the work to give them a container to do this work. And it requires a container. Okay, the kid, I will get to the kid thing, but go ahead, and I can tell that giant brain of yours is wanting to respond to that.
No, I'm saying that rituals also create a sense of belonging.
Right.
It was Durkheim who said that. He framed it as collective effervescence.
Say that again. Who said it?
Emile Durkheim, so the sociologist of the early 19th century, or 20th century, sorry. He talked about rituals and that they create like a collective effervescence. It's basically a sense of awe. I think awe is actually the right emotion to use in this sense. It's that you have this sense of vastness. It's not that you feel small. It's just that you forget you forget yourself for a moment, and you belong to a larger whole.
Yeah,
we have, I think, other rituals we could talk about. Concerts are rituals.
That's right.
And soccer games, football games are rituals in American culture. Specifically, Sundays when you watch football. It's a
joining the
ritual.
military is an initiation. It's a ritual.
Yeah.
but none of them are designed for psychological transformation.
No, none of them are. I think that perhaps catharsis is present when you go to a concert, like sense of vastness, that you belong to
Sure.
something else and that you release something within yourself. But I agree with you that none of them are used for psychological transformation, for sure.
No. So we're all walking around with a childlike psychology. And we're wondering why we're throwing rockets at each other. Because
Yeah.
that's what little boys do.
The inability to regulate your emotions, right? I was talking to
Yes.
another like a friend earlier this morning, and when we talked about this work, she's also an actress, and she works. She also has a PhD, I think, actually in psychodrama or something similar. And she talks about when we invite people to work, what we are doing is basically you, who, as a guide or a therapist or psychologist, you have hopefully a more experienced nervous system, mature nervous system. You have done your work, and you are helping others. You're inviting others to train their own nervous system and their own experience. And it made me think about John Bowlby and attachment theory, right? And basically saying that client work, is reparenting in one sense. It's to create that safe space, that secure base from where your client and you yourself also get changed by it, obviously, uh, where you can explore. We can have a series of explorations. You can explore that tingling in your throat.
Yeah.
You can express and experience that shame in your body. Yeah. So that would be my comment. So
That's a pretty good segue for me back to the parenting
yeah,
uh, question. Uh, yeah, we are reparenting each other. We're doing it with each other right now, brother.
yeah,
You know, you and I both come from wherever we came from, right? And we're handed a certain amount of superficial stuff. We're also handed some good stuff, right? That we're
mhm,
both using right now. My willingness to get in front of the camera and write books and do all this creative stuff kind of came from my mom. And,
mm,
you know, I'm pretty resilient. That kind of came from my dad. But in both cases, they also handed me a big bag of their unresolved stuff that I that it's not useful to me. It's just not useful. And there's no blaming whatsoever. But, you know, I've been through quite a few uh, intentional initiations back to myself. That's what an initiation does. It brings us back to the core of who we are, and therefore connects us to the rhythm, the authentic rhythm of the universe. You can call it whatever you want. At
yeah,
Princeton in the religious studies program, they probably call it something else. I don't know. You'd have to tell me that.
yeah,
But so the answer, here's my answer to what should parents do. All right. Step one, get off their back. Get off the back of your kids trying to teach them, train them, educate them, lead them, guide them, raise them, on and on and on and onward. Like, it may feel like good parenting, but it is a big push that they will push against eventually, because you whatever our unresolved stuff as parents is, we are going to unconsciously put it on our kids. So step one, get off their back. Consider whether this idea that you're the main teacher, the guide, the one that's going to make them be good. You know, just reconsider whether that's true or not. All right, that's step one. Most parents don't like hearing me say, "Well, I've got to raise them. They're going to, you know, that's my job. I got to." Okay,
yeah.
that's how you want to approach it. Go for it. All right, I'm asking parents to reconsider whether getting off their back is not a good idea. Number two, do your own work. Get a therapist, get in a healing group, offload your trauma, because you won't think you're doing it, but you are dumping it on your kids. Get off their back, do your own work, and watch the magic. I have not done it perfectly, I'll tell you that. But
Yeah.
I've done an experiment Gabe. Here's the parenting experiment that I have enacted, and so far it's working well. I've never punished my daughter, not once. I took her phone away from her one time. I forget what it was for, and she said, "Oh, thanks, Dad. I needed a break." Now, I will say she's been a pretty easy kid. She's been through a lot of trauma with her mom, uh, and she's resilient, but she has not been a difficult. But I wouldn't know because I haven't tried to form her into something. And now she's a superstar, finishing, and she's a senior at a film school. She's doing what she loves, and it's working. Apparently, that uh, that that research project that I've conducted, the results are coming in, and it actually works pretty good. I have not punished her ever. I praised her somewhat, but I didn't even get into a whole lot of giving her a bunch of shit when she does something good, and I have not punished her. I'm trying to allow her to emerge without my stuff on her.
Yeah.
And you can ask her; she'll tell you I haven't done that perfectly. That's for sure.
Sure.
But so there's my response to what should parents do.
Yeah. I used to think myself that I have, as a parent, this is my probably also script running within my head. It used to be, okay, I have to do all of these things. I didn't know why I had to do those things to parent, but I have come to understand myself that my only task, almost as a father, because I have two daughters, they're 7 and 5. My only task as a father is to be that secure base for them, is to connect with them, is to validate their emotions, and to, when they have, when they need somebody to rely on, to be there to rely on them, to be consistent, right? Because children need consistency. They need to know that if something scary happens, there's somebody there to pick me up. That's a secure base. To validate their emotions, to make sure that they know that whatever they're feeling, whatever they're thinking, is actually real. It's
Yeah,
real, and I'm saying it. And I've come to understand that the rest will take care of itself. Nature will take care of itself, because kids grow up, strangely enough, right? And our task is to simply be there present with them. And as we are, uh, that secure base. And I'm not perfect here, not saying that I'm perfect at all. Absolutely not. But once you do that, uh, they do grow up to understand, to have enough safety and security to
yeah,
explore themselves, to explore life in one sense,
yeah.
right?
There's so much. I have so much experience with people bringing me their kid to fix them. I mean, that's why I'm kind of militant about this. The only thing I would add to your framework for parenting, and I would put it first, would be do your own work.
Oh
Do your
yes.
own work. Do your own work. Yes, and then be supportive to your kid.
Yeah,
Be a
because
place that's very solid for your kid. Do your own work. Did I already mention that? Okay.
yeah,
So here's why I'm militant a bit about it, Gabe, because I've had so many people bring their kid who's using drugs or whatever to be fixed. And I've got a perfect example of this one kid uh, that they brought. He got kicked out of a particular country. That's the way we talk about for acting out and all that. And so I did a family session, and he was like this, right? And then the rest of the family was all about him, right? About the kid. And the more I found out about the family, it was just a giant shit show. The kid was the healthiest one in the bunch. And this particular family took a different route than most families I've dealt with. They're all doing work now, and there's so much freedom happening for everybody. But most of the times, I've led family programs at treatment centers. I've developed several of them. The whole first day is about teaching about codependency and enabling. Not to say that parents are to blame for their kid using drugs. It's not. It's different. But uh, the fact that parents can't let their kids have their own pain, that it's too painful for them, so they keep bailing them out over and over and over. You can have 2 days of training for a lot of parents in families that have addiction, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's interesting," and they'll go right back to doing exactly what they were doing before. They don't do step one, which is Do your own healing work. Get to your own 12-step group for your codependency and your enabling. And they'll just keep blaming it on the kid. And that's an extreme example. Addiction is an extreme example. There's many other like diagnoses of oppositional defiant disorder. Okay, the kid is revolting against your shit, and you're going to diagnose it and medicate him. Here we go. You got me started now, Gabe.
I agree with you, and my question would be then, what's codependency? How do you define it, and how do you do that actually, and why is it so important? Obviously, you have to do your own work in order to understand first of all what it is and how you get out of that uh, prison, I
Well,
guess, right?
well, yeah. Enmeshment causes codependency. So enmeshment is when the roles in the family get obscured. In other words, a kid has to grow up too quick and become the caregiver of a
Hmm.
parent, and sometimes that's not intentional. It's just a situation. But the kid misses their childhood, right? Or sometimes, like in my case, I was infantilized. You're familiar? You heard that term?
Hmm.
It's long, yeah, of course.
But say something more about it. Maybe the
Well,
listeners
it's
don't know.
just I will. My mom came in and bailed me out of everything. I never had any consequences. So I kind of went into my adult life thinking that's how it is, but apparently it's not. There's consequences. And so I didn't get to grow up with my own consequences. It was too uncomfortable for her to see me get in any kind of trouble or anybody treating me in any way my that I might have created. So also, if when there's addiction in the family, there's a usually a hero child, and then a child that gets lost. There's a enabler parent usually. There's a a scapegoat like the troublemaker. We all take on different roles to try to balance the system.
Hmm.
This taking on of other roles that aren't who we really are creates codependency, which is we take that role into our adult lives, and then we're either too much of a helper for everyone, or we're like hiding out in the corner, not feeling good enough to be part of the group, or whatever that thing is that we got trained to be in the enmeshment of the family of origin. It's a different aspect of codependency. It shows up in different ways for different people. A lot of times you can just point, if you want a short definition, it has to do with uh, my reality is based on what's happening outside of me. I'm going to act in. I don't have the ability to just act based on my own truth. I'm going to
Yeah,
act on whatever's happening out here.
and that's kind of also talks to what you said initially when you described your own experience of the love and pull,
Oh, the what?
isn't it?
The love addiction, push me, pull
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Push me,
That's
pull you. Yeah.
Yeah. Pia Melody, who wrote two books. One is Facing Codependence. That's the one that I hand clients. I used to hand clients. Now I send them the link. And then certain clients get the other link, which is Facing Love Addiction. Pia Melody describes love addiction as the advanced form of codependency. There's a UT study, University of Texas study, that they did with survivors of serious suicide attempts.
Mm.
Survivors of serious suicide attempts, but they made it. And they asked them a bunch of questions. One of the questions was, what was the thing that pushed you over the edge? Somewhere around 80% of them said some romantic breakup, something disturbing in a romantic relationship or some kind of a committed relationship or something. 80%.
Well,
And there are way more suicides in the United States than there are opioid deaths. So just think about that for a second. I'm going to kill myself over the fact that she left. Does it? Doesn't that sound like detoxification of a drug? It's like it feels so miserable. If I don't get my drug, I'm going to kill myself. It's so painful. It's addiction, Gabe, and it's never identified as addiction. Love addiction is the advanced form of codependency. I am no good without you. We don't have a center, right? And it's all rooted in trauma.
Yeah,
which we've already talked about. It's
exactly.
unresolved trauma is the driver of most of the horror in our world. And every time you and I do our work to heal, we're putting a little bit of health in the bucket.
For sure. What's on the other side of, because a lot of people that I talk to, they're scared of doing the work. They're scared. They're scared that, I don't want to crack open that can. I've closed it a long time ago. Some call it I don't know, in Swedish we call it the bucket of Pandora. Pandora something.
Yeah,
Do you have that
Pandora's
in English?
box, right?
Exactly, Pandora's box. I don't want to open Pandora's box because, all hell will be set loose. People are scared of that. But the cost of not doing the work is actually long-term wise, it's much more. It's
Yeah.
disengagement from life. It's disengagement from life. It's disconnect with yourself, disconnect from other people. So what's on the other side of actually doing the work? What happens to you? You talk
Well,
about freedom as well.
well, to talk about the the resistance to doing the work, the fear, right? It's there should be fear because that's what we're being asked to do is set aside everything that we know, everything that we've been doing. In 12-step recovery, we say when a newcomer comes in, we say, hey, buddy, you only have to change one thing. And they say, oh, really? Wow, what
Everything.
is that? Everything. The one thing is everything. And it's a little bit of a wise ass way to say it, but it's true. And
Yeah.
don't do it until you're ready. That's the beauty of train wrecks. When somebody comes into my practice and I find out that they're not using drugs or alcohol, or they don't have compulsive sexual acting out or anything, they're just mildly uncomfortable, I go, oh shit, this is going to be a tough one. Train wrecks are useful sometimes. And I don't think this, I hope, maybe my colleagues think this is a little cavalier probably, but I often, when somebody comes to my practice and they're telling me they're proud of how they've cut down their drinking, and they're obviously alcoholic or an
Yeah.
addict. But what I've cut down, Bob, isn't that good? I said, I don't know about that. Actually, my recommendation to you, if you're not willing to get into a program of healing and spirit with a spiritual component to it, I think you should go drink more. In fact, I've said it many times. Maybe the therapy gods will come and swoop down uh, and punish me for it. But for me, that's what it took. I had to have enough pain to take action on the spiritual part of the program, which is actually spiritual is a trick word, which really means getting out of here, getting out of thinking that I have the answer here. This is what got me in trouble. I have to do
Yeah.
something to look out beyond myself, and it takes a lot of pain for me to do that historically.
Yeah.
Now I'm sort of in a rhythm of making better choices, but not always. I still, the little train wrecks in my life now are course corrections. Is the is,
Yeah.
is the way I would say it. And what's on the other side of it is joy. And the bad news is you have to let the grief be flowing on a regular basis to find that joy. Joy and grief are the same river.
Yeah. The
Grief,
same
that
river.
thing that we avoid the most, right? Grief, that thing that is underneath the surface, almost like a river running below our anger and our thinking and our resentments and our problems. And underneath there is a river of grief. And right in the middle of that river is that beautiful joy that we all want, right? We're all very busy trying to get happy. I want to get happy. Let me get happy. Yeah, I don't know. Go for it. Icarus flying toward the sun till his wings melt
Yeah.
and he splashes into the water. Hopefully he splashes into the water hard enough to get down to the grief. And that's where the joy is. And for me, that's my answer to it. It's a little poetic the way I'm saying it, but it maybe hyper
It's
poetic.
beautiful.
But it's like for me, joy and grief happen at the same time. When you get me talking about my two daughters, the one that died and the one that's a superstar right now, I am so happy and so sad at so the tears come at the same time. That's my proof.
So underneath, so grief and joy are the two sides of the same coin, or it's the same river. That's
Yeah,
actually beautifully
you
put.
block one, you block the other. And I'm
Hmm.
not talking about the happy obsession that we have, at least in the United
Yeah.
States. I don't know what the
No,
Swedes are up to.
yeah, it's the same here. Similar here, at least. Yeah. Yeah, I actually agree with you fully. I'm tuning into my own experience and trying to understand grief, because grief is grieving for something that you have lost, or something that you should have had but you didn't get. So unmet needs.
Yeah.
And when you grieve, you reconnect with your body, you reconnect with your emotions. And the body is probably the river, right? If you don't put your experience, if you don't tap into that, then joy will be constricted. And grief needs to happen in order for you to feel that joy.
Yeah, grief
Yeah.
has a bad rap. We say that in the States. It got a bad rap, like a bad rapport. It's probably short
Yeah.
for rapport. I'm not sure. But it's uh
But it's also associated with death. That's the only time you
right.
can
It's
grieve.
associated
But
right.
but it's not. It's not, right? It's not
Well, it
only when
can,
somebody dies.
yeah, it is. But in many cultures, like the Tibetans, it's a, and even in Mexican culture, I went to the Day of the Dead. Man, it's not it's not like the United States, which is rah, 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 live, 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 success, success, success. Underneath all of that is avoid death. Whatever you do, don't talk about that. We're like encouraged to never talk about anything that has depth to it. We're supposed to be like
Yeah.
rockets heading towards something. I don't know. I think all of our pursuit into space has been a practice for what Carl Jung knew, that the real exploration is within. And we're
Yeah.
just, all this external exploration is practice for the real journey. Yeah.
What I meant by that is that usually when we talk about grief, it's always like the death of somebody that we talk about, right? But you
Yeah.
can grieve over many things in your life, and I think we need to grieve over many things in our
Right.
life that have happened. Not merely like you can grieve over, like if you think about AA or NA, grieve over all the lost relationships, grieve over the people that you have hurt in your life. That's also something you can grieve over, right? You
That's right.
can agree for that.
My experience in AA is extensive. I'm not going to get a whole lot of encouragement there to do a bunch of grief work. And here's the reason, because it is the one place on the planet to help people stop drinking. The one place. They figured it out in 1935 that there is only one solution. Previous to that, they were hitting people with 2x4s over the head and hammers and bleeding them, trying
Yeah.
to cure alcoholism. Well, in 1935, they surrendered to the fact that there is no cure. All it is a one day at a time healing process that involves one alcoholic to another. Same thing with trauma work. Only another person that's done trauma work can help a person do trauma work, really, or to take them really
Yeah,
deeply
for
into
sure.
transformation. I mean, anybody can teach trauma informed concepts, right? But you need somebody that's been there if you want to
Yeah.
go deep. Same thing with AA, but in AA, they have one thing: let's stop drinking. And so, a whole lot of grief work and dealing with our childhood issues, that's not the place necessarily. However,
Yeah.
they can go together. Adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families is a powerful program for healing trauma, and it's sustainable. There are 1,000 meetings that you can go to this week around the planet that will be talking about inner child work and reparenting ourselves and healing, but using the 12 steps as a guideline, a spiritual guideline. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and to just get back to what we're actually talking about, I don't think we need to figure out the program for grief. Like I can grieve this and I can grieve that, and let's grieve this and grieve. We need to do no. what I'm talking about is noticing when that what is that? What'd you call it? The tingle?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's and whatever that is for you. I feel a little tightness in the back of my throat when I'm wanting to cry. I felt it 8 or 10 times in that show that I was at, Wicked, last night, and is to notice it and allow that to come forward. If you want to call it grief, you can, but it has some negative stuff hanging on it. But whatever that thing that brings the tears, it washes, it loosens the lodged trauma in our body. And if you can follow it up with the question, when did I first feel this? What happened? And to begin to tell the story of our healing process and make it a creative journey as opposed to a, oh my God, I've got to look at this horrible stuff. Okay. If that's how you want to see it, that's fine. It's probably not going to be sustainable. But we need to learn how to tell the story, let the feelings flow, and turn it. And one more thing related to what's on the other side of this that you just asked. I'll tell you what's on the other side of it. You and I are doing it right now. We're turning our wounds into a creative expression. Right? See, I've got all these shows that I've written. That show right there I wrote called The Three-Cornered Hat. I wrote a couple of books. I'm not trying to promote myself here. I'm just saying the healing you will create on that river of emotion comes a lot of creativity. That's the other.
Yeah, you answered the question. My last question that I had, namely, how is creativity connected to all of this? You gave a perfect answer there in very short, a few sentences. So, thank you for that. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
Jung.
was
Did you
sorry.
study much of Jung at Princeton, or not so much?
No, not at Princeton, but I did study Jung to some extent in my social work training.
Right.
Yeah.
So to some extent, because usually in our academic settings, there isn't a whole lot of they'll mention him right after Freud, right? And then they get on to cognitive behavioral
Mm-hmm.
mostly, and that has to do with the fact that most academics have not done much shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
So how are they going to teach it, or how are they going to validate it?
Yeah.
But Jung talks about libido in a different way than Freud or the other psychodynamic. Libido is not just a sexual thing that it's become in popular culture. Libido is our life force juice, and
Yeah.
creativity, spirituality, sexuality are all the same juice. Sometimes when I'm coming to the computer to write an article or a newsletter, or I've got an idea, I have that kind of same feeling that I had, that love feeling that, oh, isn't she? She's the one. Sometimes I have that feeling around my creativity. That's interesting to me. I'm going to do some writing about that.
Yeah. Wonderful. Is there any questions that I should have asked you, but I didn't ask?
That's a good one right there. I don't think so, Gabe. I think this was a lively interaction. I'm glad to connect, and maybe we'll get to connect again on this path.
Yeah, I hope so.
Because we opened a lot of doors. We only took a few steps into each of them, but I've really appreciated this time with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And if people want to get in touch with you and want to get know you better, where can they find you?
I guess the best doorway is bobbeare.com. And
Okay.
the last name spelled Beare, bobbeare.com. That's the main website. I also,
Great.
if you're interested in healing work, there's a workshop called the Deep Waters Experience, and we have many trainings related to that. It's a nonprofit here in Central Texas. That's deepwatersrecovery.org. So bobbeare.com and deepwatersrecovery.org.
Perfect.
And
I'll put those also in the notes of the episode when it comes out, both on Spotify and on YouTube and Apple Podcasts as well, so that they can just click. Truly appreciate you, Bob. I thank you so much for this conversation. It was wonderful. truly enjoyed it. So, and I again, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Let's do it again. Let's stay connected on the Twit or X or whatever
Absolutely.
you want to call
For
it.
sure. Count
Okay,
on it.
partner. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.